Aloha, this is Ron here, Goodness, and I'm a Kanaka Maoli software developer, web developer, and I like to demonstrate how to build a new SvelteKit app using nhost Hasura authentication in a simple way. Okay. I'm not going to get into why I use SvelteKit, why I use Hasura, why I use nhost, but there's great reasons for all of those. I'm just going to do a little demo. And hopefully this demo is going to be a little easier than even demos using React or Next.js, although those are pretty simple too. Okay, let's get started. Now, to demonstrate, I'm going to rely on a few things in Svelte and nhost, which can hook together nicely. Now, Svelte has a built-in store, which is an observable. And basically, what we're going to do is to use the writable store, create a component, more than one component, which reads or observes that store, and to see if there's any change in authentication status, such as user logged in, user logged out, or other things regarding their JWT expired, the token expired, etc. On the nhost side, their library implements an on-auth state changed event handler. Now, what we can do is create an event handler which will then update the writable stores that we have so that we can link them together. So leveraging Svelte's reactive programming model. So anytime the components are observing these observables and will update immediately. So not only can we have a login form when the user signed out, when you log in, it immediately can change to some kind of status and a log off button, etc. And additionally, we can create some kind of widget or which can be dropped in the navigation or in the layout all over the app, and we get updates that way. So everything's always in sync, and we're going to try and do it with the least friction in the code, because less load means less bugs. Less bugs, that's good, more maintainable. So I'll also implement some basic stuff like a SvelteKit layout page, a couple of pages for routing, and the login, logout status box, which I mentioned. Also, because SvelteKit uses Vite under the hood, which is awesome, no transpiling, it has, we're going to create a .n file for the, in the Vite style. So I'll show you that as well. So I think I'll use TypeScript for this because I was using JavaScript, but I don't know. I'll try the TypeScript version because it helped me find a bug in this when I was testing it out. So here we go. Okay, first we're going to create an nhost project on their service. nhost.io is a backend as a service provider. It's built using Hasura plus nhost on open source Hasura authentication and storage libraries. And I think now with their version 2 public beta, they're supporting serverless functions as well. They have a command line interface if you want to run it locally on your development machine in a container. But for this demonstration, I'll just use the free service that's online. Okay, and I'll show you that. Once you have a login registered, and I use the GitHub authentication in my case, but it's not required. You can create a selected workspace and then you create a new app. So here's a workspace I created, and let's create a new app. Let's call it Hana nhost SvelteKit Auth. Okay, and I'm going to put it in my Hana workspace, and you can select. They started to support multiple regions, so I'll try Virginia, and we're going to use the free starter version, which is great. This is a great option, and as you can see, to upgrade to Pro, it's $25 a month. But there's, happy to support this, at small and medium level. If your needs outgrow that, the great thing is you can always change hosting providers, or you self-host. Okay, so huge benefit. So click Create App, and it's going to provision the app. So similar to other cloud providers. I believe the version 2 is on top of AWS. Okay, so now we have a brand new app. You can see they have a little getting started code, and just to quickly take you through the tabs, you can see that we have a backend URL which we're going to want in our app. This will be the main way that we access it programmatically. You can see there's a data tab. This is how you access the Hasura console for your GraphQL and other permissions related things. We have a users interface which we're gonna be using, and which also has especially the roles, which is key for your app. There's different login providers, and not today, but eventually we're going to use, there's a file system available, basically. So if your application is going to store files. So to start, what we're going to do is, let's just create a user or two. And so this is going to be our test. If you go in here, you'll see it's unverified, so it will email, it'll do the whole thing that you expect. You can reset your password, or you can log in using a magic link. And the roles, this is a critical thing. So when you do a Hasura app, usually you're going to have role-based authentication. So there's a way that you can add additional roles and then say which users are connected to which roles. So you can see by default, create a new user as a user role, and that's, as you learn more about Hasura authentication and authorization, this will become very relevant. Now, what I will do is go through this and verify this. I'm not going to show you that, but you'll see that I'll get it verified. All right, I ended up making a second one because my first didn't have email set up, but this one now status is verified. It doesn't say unverified anymore. Now what we're going to do is get ready to create our SvelteKit project. And so we got a terminal. We're going to call it this, npm init, Svelte project name. We're going to create a skeleton project. In this case, I'll use TypeScript, but you can do either. Okay. Now we change to that directory. npm install. And then let's open it in VS Code. Okay. So we got a brand new project. I'm going to switch to terminal here. And as you see, we have a basic SvelteKit, which we can npm run dev. And here it is. This is standard stuff. So now what we're going to do is create a .m file, which is common practice, so you don't you don't have to put your environment in source control. You see it's in the get ignore by default. And what we're going to do is create the environment variable called vite nhost backend URL. And for those of you who are not used to using vite or SvelteKit, the environment variables have to be prefixed with vite in order for the front end browser to put that in the code, because it kind of when you build the code for deployment, vite will replace all instances with what you put here in the environment variable. So what we want is this backend URL. So I'm going to copy this and paste it here. So this is our unique backend URL for this project. Next, we're going to start building out our little app. So to start, let's create a, we already have a source folder, so make a lib folder, which is it's sort of a convention for SvelteKit. And then what we want, we already have index.svelte. What we're going to do is create an underscore layout. This will be our layout template. What we're going to do is have a script tag. This is where the, and then the, for a layout page, typically what we do is we just have a basic div, the main section, and then a slot tag, and then whatever is in the page, like let's say index.svelte, it has this, will be included in the slot file. So if we, for example, if I say app layout page, save that, we'll go back here. You can see now that the welcome to SvelteKit is enclosed inside of this app layout page. So this is basic stuff. I'm going to change this. Let's just call this nhost Hasura auth plus SvelteKit. Okay. And then back in our index file, we won't need, we'll leave this out, get rid of this for now. So this home page, we're going to, let's just call this index for now, okay, just so we don't get mixed up, index. Now we're going to create a second file in our routes called login. This will be a login page. We'll build this out in a little bit. Okay. And then in the layout, we'll put a basic navigation. Where we have a home page and a login page. So it's like home, login. Okay. I guess we don't have, here, I had to reload it. So there we go, home and login. Okay, for our next section, what we're going to do is, what we want to do is encapsulate the logic in a library file. We'll call it nhost.ts. And this will just, contain use of the nhost client in our app. We haven't installed the library yet though. So to install the library, we can look at the documentation, you create your app, and you look at the JavaScript client. So it's framework agnostic. So although React is the most common right now in the JavaScript developer community, you can really use any framework or no framework with nhost. And so with the SvelteKit, it's going to be very similar to like a no framework usage in this case. So what we're going to do is npm install nhost.js. Okay. There we go. Now, okay, like for starters, let's just get our environment variable. So this will be used, we called it this, backend URL, So let's call the constant the same thing. And using Vite, we do import meta.env, the name of the environment variable. And then sometimes TypeScript might complain about it, but if it does, we can do like cast it as a string or something like this. It's basically the same thing. And then basically what we do is what we're going to do is define our clients. Let's just call it nhost. We'll say it's a new nhost client. And that will take you see, we can treat it like a config object. Okay, so in this case, our config objects this is a TypeScript version, so nhost client constructor params, which will be backend URL, which is what we just defined. And I guess there's like some other options, but we're not going to use them right now. So in this case, what we're also going to do in this file is we are going to create a Svelte store, which follows the observable contract. So the Svelte store will be, application observable in memory, and then what we want is that when the user is signed in, let's just say, let's do it right here. So like, so this Svelte store, we're going to have one which is signed in. Let's call it is signed in. And this will be, okay, so Svelte store is writable, so we got to import this. Writable. And this would be like true false. So we could start it as a false value, or sometimes what I like to do is let's just call it a null. And then, so it's kind of like it's like a Boolean, it's a nullable Boolean. So you could have is signed in false, is signed in true, or null would be the undefined state. So you can see it imported writable from self-store. So that's the auto import. And then we're also, it's going to be convenient is that when we do get signed in, is that we grab the user. We can also make that a store. So in this case, that can also be null. So user can be null, but so the idea is that if we're not signed in, user will be null, and then if we are signed in, it will be the current logged in user data value. Okay. So that's pretty easy. This is like a Svelteism. And so like if you're not familiar with using Svelte stores, is that when you're actually using it, is that this user is an observable. But when you're actually, if you want to get the value of the observable, you prefix it with $. So it would be like this. So like in your applications, this would actually give you the real user object. Now, what we're also going to do is use this nhost client. Let's see. It's basically well, let's actually, before we hook it up, let's try this. Let's see if we can access this. So if let me fire up the app again, npm run dev, and we'll go back to our app. So let's say we're on the login page, and then we wanted to know whether the user is signed in. So we could just do some basic stuff like say like the user is we'll just do a JSON stringify on the user, the value of the user observable. Okay, so what would that look like? Oh, export let user. So yeah, so we need a script tag here, right? And so if we're gonna basically we'll get it as a property here, like a SvelteKit style. So export let user, and so what this means is that this login page, which is a component, is that when SvelteKit is instantiating it, it will fill in the value of user, which is the observable. So it'll be something like this, like user from $lib, which is like a special notation, and nhost.ts. So actually, maybe I don't export let user, I'll just import it, because then we're getting it from our client, and then that should work. So now we will go back here, user is null. Okay. Right. So here we go. And then let's do the same thing for is signed in. We got an auto import there. Okay, great. So now, can we hook this up better? All right, I guess we're gonna have to build our login page a little. So the basic idea is we have want to have an if statement here. So if $ is signed in, and let's say like the user is also truthy, let's say you're signed in. then else. Then we have our login. End of. So basically, we're going to have to log in soon. So let's make a form. All right, I forgot. Then there's also going to be, there could be a situation where both is signed in and user are null. So in that case, the else if will be if is signed in is false, then we're going to log in. And then this case, this is like the null case. So probably this will be like page loading or that kind of situation. So this will kind of handle our undefined states while the app is transitioning. Okay, so for our form, I'm going to try and do a basic form instead of using a library. So this is going to be I'm going to copy and paste a little bit of this to save time. So typically, so we're going to have an email, and a text field, which is an email type text, placeholder email, and the password. And then we're going to have a standard submit button. Okay. So when we look at that, it's going to, oh, it's page loading. Okay, so, but it's going to be a basic form. So, now that, so let's fix that actually. So we can see the form. See, page loading is because we're not really updating the stores for is signed in and user. So actually, this would be a good time to fill out that. And this is my second part. So what I said is that we're going to use Svelte store on one end, and then on the other end, we're going to access the nhost. What's it called? On auth state changed. So nhost auth on auth state changed. So the way we use that is we define function, and it's called on the auth, on this function that we're defining, it's going to take an event and a session, and this is documented in the nhost docs, as you can see here. Now, what I found is that there are, in my testing, there are, event is basically, it's kind of like a couple of constants, right? So one is signed in, And the other, I mean, I guess it's signed out, let's assume. Right? So, when this fires, we are going to update our is signed in observable. And because we can't use the $ notation here because it's not a Svelte template, this is just a JS or a TS file, but we're going to set it this way. Let's just do .set. And so we're going to set the value of this observable on this event, on the signed in event, to true. And then if this handler also files, state change fires, and we're also going to set it to false in the opposite case. And so when our application starts, this is signed in is null. But once we get our first on-off state changed event, it's going to be set to true or false depending what the event is. Okay? And now, since we have a second store, where the user store, we're going to set that to session user. Okay? And then in this case, in the opposite case, it will be set back to null. All right. And then sometimes I get, we can use this nullable, whatever you call it, in the new JavaScript, so that if session is null, you won't get an error if you're trying to access session.user. Okay. So let's see here how this is running. Any different? So now what we see here is that instead of loading, we actually see the form. So you can see the email password, and then it would be great to maybe console log this. Okay, you can see auth, the handler is firing, so auth state changed, state is now signed out. Okay. All right, great. So let's go back to the login form. And what I like to do, you always want to provide some user feedback. So yes, for the login form, I'm going to do a little boilerplate. So we're just going to have a kind of a status message. This will be like in red at the top of the form. So all our status and our errors will go here. Yeah, let's put it here. Yeah, login message. I'll just make it red. And then for handling our form submission, I'm going to copy and paste just a little boilerplate that I've done. If you look at this, we're going to call it login form submit, and it is going to use form data, right? And it just loops through all the form data. It's going to put it in this submit data key value object. And then it's going to call this sign in, which we haven't written yet, but that's the idea. So I guess we can write the sign in. So I think I would put the sign in the nhost library. That will look something like this. So we have our sign in function, takes the parameters. You got to understand these are the key value pairs. And then they'll contain the email and the password. These get put into the nhost auth sign in. Okay, so whatever nhost does with it, and they'll return back data. Okay, so now this sign in exists, so we can import it. And I'm not sure why this doesn't. This is just TypeScriptism. I think it'll be fine. Okay. And then we didn't hook up the form action. So the form, let's do the Svelte version, which is on click. And then what is it? Okay, so on click, it's the login form submit. So this is the one in our same page. And it takes the event from the form. And then what we're going to also do is prevent defaults. So we can see this, another Svelte doesn't prevent default, which means the browser won't post the form submit like a regular browser. It'll disable that. So it'll only execute this function internally in the page. It won't cause a another HTTP post. Okay. So let's see where we are now here. So we have form data. Oh, it doesn't like that. Okay, I think I found my problem. By accident, I did on click instead of on submit for the form, so it's a different action. So now, yeah, so there's no error when I click in there. Okay, so now we can. So let's say I type something in and I say login. I think it caused a refresh. That didn't work. Okay, so I got to redo the prevent default. Okay. Now we got something. Here, let's start over. Okay. So now, when we post the form, okay, so now that works. So email is incorrectly formatted. So what's going on is that it actually did execute the form submit. It prevented default post, but our submit data function went to nhost. If you look at the network, it did go to our nhost and posted to nhost, and then it came back with the 401 unauthorized, okay, which is exactly what we expected. Okay, invalid or expired refresh token. Great. So that is a successful fail. Okay. Now we're going to try something else, which is correctly formatted, but it's wrong. Okay. So when we do that, as you can see, state is still signed out, and we get a different error message. So incorrect email or password. Now we're going to actually try the real thing, which is our test. And if I do a wrong password, it's still going to give me the wrong password. But now if I type in the correct password, which we put into the nhost user admin, what do we get? There, login success. Cool, you are signed in. And if you can see here, the access token exists now. And then if we go to home, go back to login, it still says you are signed in. So it is working. This is working. So the signed in and the user. So we can even do something more, which is you are signed in, comma, user dot, and I think in nhost it's like display name. Okay, our test at nhost.ts, right? And great. And so if you can see here, if I go back to the back end, where's my back end? Yeah. My users, our test. So that is my display name. So if I said like our test, right? Just save that. Now if we go back to our app, oh, you know what? Okay, so I reloaded the app, then it reloaded from nhost. Okay, our test. And of course there's other, if you want to see other things available, you can do that. But let's move on. So now that we have a login, we don't have a log out. So the log out, we'll need a log out function. So what we can do is, I guess we can just add a link here. Sign out, right? And so for this sign out, it's actually pretty simple. So like, instead of, you can make its own standalone function, or you could I guess you could just say nhost.auth.sign out. Just see if this works inline. So you're signed in, our test sign out, sign out. Okay, so now that worked. So if you look here, I click sign out, and it says auth state change, state now signed out. Great. So now we have login and log out. Login, So the one last thing I'm going to do for this demonstration is just create a simple Svelte component which shows the status. So, you know, let's say there's a navigation, it shows you like either hello, logged in, so-and-so, or it can become a button to log in, to go to the login page. So, you know, we'll create a Svelte component. So just for common practice, I'll create under lib components folder, and we're going to create a new file which will be called login status box.svelte. And so this will be our component. So I'll have a script tag, and then it's gonna make a div. This will be login status. So I mean, I guess, you know, I can have a class. You know, and the idea is that this will be a little thing that shows on most or all the pages, somewhere in the navigation. So similar to our login page, we're gonna have a if is signed in, right? And the user is truthy. Then we'll say aloha user display name, and then else and if. Okay, so in the else we're going to have a link to the login page, so that's really easy. I'll just do /login, which is in our routes already. Okay. Now, and then this component, yeah, you can see the imports went in my script tag. So I think that's all. We'll make it real simple. And then now, you know, just we can put a little styling in here just to denote this component for fun. Login status, and then we'll make a border style dotted border color gray, display flex, and then width will fit the content, so it's not, so it's small, it's not big. Okay, so now we have a brand new component, and then we're just going to include this in the layout page so it appears both on the home page and the login page. Okay, so where's our layout? So, you know, I don't know, we'll just put it on the top. So this is called login status box, and then we'll just import that. Okay, so now when we look at the app, we have a login box on the home page and the login page. And now go login. Okay, so what is that? Our test. Log in. And now it says Aloha R test, and that's on the login page and the home page. The home page as well. Okay, that is my little demo for nhost authentication with SvelteKit. I hope this is useful to you. I think this is my first live coding video, so hopefully you like it. And I'll put links to a companion tech blog post I have, as well as some source code on GitHub. Okay. Aloha. Ahuyo.